What if you could start a revolution, not with a sword, but with a pen? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of a man who did just that. He was a doctor, a novelist, a scholar, and he proved that the right words could be more powerful than any army. This is the story of José Rizal. So let's start with this massive question. How can a book, a single book, actually change the history of an entire country? It sounds almost impossible, right? But that's exactly what we're going to unpack. We're going to see how two novels from one man managed to pull the curtain back on an empire's injustices and basically awaken the soul of a nation. All right, Section 1, A Spark in the Silence. To really get who this guy was, we have to go back to the world that made him. Our story kicks off in the 19th century Philippines, a place of incredible beauty, but a place that had been silenced for centuries by colonial rule. Just try to put yourself there for a second. Imagine living in a place where speaking your mind could literally get you thrown in jail, where injustice wasn't a surprise, it was just part of the daily grind. A place where even daring to hope for something better was a dangerous act. That was the air people breathed in the Philippines under Spain. And into this world of silence, on June 19th, 1861, José Rizal was born. And from the very beginning, he wasn't just smart. He was on another level, a true prodigy. He just soaked up knowledge like a sponge. And lucky for him, he had a family that believed in one thing above all else. Education is power. You could say these three ideas were basically programmed into him from day one. First, that knowledge was the key to freedom. Second, that loving your country wasn't a choice, it was a duty. And maybe the most important one, he was taught to always question the world around him. To look at things and ask, why? Why is it like this? Okay, moving on. Section 2, An Awakening in Europe. So Rizal's mind was just too big for the colony. He travels to Europe to finish his studies. But what he finds there does a lot more than just give him a degree. It absolutely lights a fire in him. I mean, can you even imagine the whiplash? He leaves this world of fear and suffering and lands on a continent that is just buzzing with freedom and new ideas. People were arguing, debating, and speaking freely. It wasn't a crime. It was celebrated. Seeing that and then thinking about the suffocating silence back home, it must have been a gut punch. He saw, clear as day, everything his people were being denied. And this timeline, wow, it really shows you how quickly everything happened. In just 14 short years, from the moment he gets to Europe to his execution, he writes the two books that would come to define his nation's struggle and seal his own fate. A short life, but unbelievably impactful. And this, right here, this was his big idea. He saw all the revolutionary energy in Europe, but he made a very deliberate choice. He decided that the first step toward freedom wasn't a bloody uprising. No, it was an intellectual one. He believed that before a people can be free, they have to see the truth of their situation. So his weapon of choice wasn't going to be a sword. It was going to be his pen. So, let's get into his weapons of choice. Section 3, The Pen as a Weapon. We're talking about two novels that didn't just make a splash, they caused a tidal wave that shook an entire empire. In 1887, he drops Noli Me Tangere, which means touch me not. And wow, did it touch a nerve. He used a fictional story to hold up a giant mirror to the colonial government and the church, showing all the corruption, abuse, and injustice for what it was. Of course, the Spanish banned it immediately, but you know how that goes, right? That just made people want to read it even more. It spread in secret, passed from hand to hand, and started planting the seeds of what it meant to be Filipino. Then, 4 years later, comes the sequel, El Filibusterismo, The Reign of Greed. And you can just feel the shift. The tone is way darker. It's angrier. It's more pained. This wasn't a gentle critique anymore. This book was born from rage. It was asking a really terrifying question. What happens when you push people so far that all hope for peaceful change is gone? All right, Section 4, An Idea on Trial. The ultimate sacrifice. You can't poke an empire like that and not expect it to poke back. Writing these books was an act of pure courage, and Rizal knew it would come with a massive cost. But he returned to the Philippines anyway. The empire he'd shaken with his words was now ready to hit back, hard. The end came so fast and so unfairly. He was arrested, put through a total sham of a trial, and sentenced to death. Think about that. He wasn't on trial for an act of violence. He was on trial for his ideas, for the words he dared to write down. And here's the crazy, tragic irony of his whole life. This was a man of peace. He consistently argued against a violent revolution. But the government was so terrified of his ideas, they treated him like the most dangerous rebel of all. They couldn't defeat his arguments, so they decided to just get rid of the man making them. So on December 30th, 1896, he faced that firing squad. And by all accounts, he was completely calm. He faced death with this incredible dignity, a final, quiet act of defiance that showed he was not afraid. He died for what he believed in. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, A Nation's Enduring Legacy, because his story doesn't end there, not even close. In fact, his death is where the next chapter explodes into being. The Spanish thought they were putting out a fire, but really, they just threw gasoline on it. His execution was supposed to be the final warning, a show of force to crush any thought of rebellion for good, but it did the exact opposite. As the sound of those gunshots echoed, one man fell, but an entire nation started to rise. His death became the one thing that united everybody. This peaceful man's execution became the rallying cry for the very armed revolution he had tried so hard to prevent. The fight for true independence had begun. And that really is his legacy. Rizal proved that courage doesn't always have to roar. His power wasn't in a sword, it was in his quiet, unwavering commitment to telling the truth no matter what it cost him. He showed a whole generation that resistance could be quiet and still be powerful enough to change the world. In the end, it all boils down to this one simple, profound idea he left for all of us. Freedom begins with truth. Before you can fight for anything, you have to be willing to see and speak the truth. That was his gift to his country, and honestly, it's his lesson for the world. So, as we wrap this up, his story kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? He chose truth and reform as his battlefield. It makes you wonder, in our world today, what ideas are that important? What ideas are worth our conviction, our courage? What truths do we need to start speaking?